Hi, guys. So here I am with Todd Smith. And Todd, you are a facilitator with Byron Katie's The Work. And I'm not sure how many of the people listening to this have actually had experience with The Work or heard of it. By now, I think it's millions of people have done it. But my personal experience was that when I first sort of had a bit of a shift and I was really called towards more presence and mindfulness, it was Eckhart Tolle that was the entry point. So I read his book actually years before I read his book, and it completely didn't click. And then about 3 years later, let's say, suddenly it was like I was thirsty for that information and for more spiritual teachings, and it totally made sense at that point. And I heard that's like a common thing for many people. And she was actually touring with Eckhart on the same tours for a while there. And so I sort of got introduced to her work through him. And the overall, I mean, we can talk about from your perspective how it all worked. But for me, it was like a master class in how the mind works. And it totally did a complete 180 of what I thought the way things worked and the way things really are to the way things really are. And it's sort of like you realize that it's sort of like the Matrix taking the red pill. And everything your whole worldview kind of does a bit of a shift. And I don't know, you've been deep into this world for much longer than myself. So I'm curious, how did you come across her work eventually? What was your story? And also, what's been your perspective? Like how would you summarize her to somebody who's never come across the work before in Byron Katie?
Yeah, great. Well, I found the work in 2006. My partner pointed out Byron Katie's book, Loving What Is, in a bookstore, and he said, this is a real deal. He looks into a lot of this stuff, and he really was impressed with her. And so I read the book, and I was like, whoa, this is the missing piece that I was missing. I've been into spiritual development my whole life, and I have a very big affinity for that. But there was something about her practicality. It was so down to earth and so real. And I remember just being really excited reading the book. And then I thought, I want to start doing this. And so in 2007, I just started doing it on a regular basis. And when I first started, the issue that was up for me was my relationship. Ironically, the person who gave me the book or pointed out the book it was tough for me at that time. I felt like I was trapped in a relationship and had a lot of things going on. And I started working through it, just one little situation at a time, just doing this process called the work. And my perspective started shifting. I started seeing wait a minute, maybe it's not so bad. Wait a minute, maybe that's my doing, not his doing. And I started feeling more and more responsible, more and more empowered, and the stress started falling away. And I can say now I'm 10 years later and I'm still in the same relationship, and it's a very different relationship now. So for me, that's from doing the work.
Yeah.
Now, second question is, what is the work? And I think your insight was really good, that it just invites you to look at things in a completely opposite way, like completely different way. So you start out thinking that this is absolute, that somebody wronged me, and then they turn it around and it ends up being, wait a minute, I'm wronging them or I'm wronging myself. What's going on here? And it's not just turning around. The work is self-inquiry. So that means asking yourself. It's like turning inwards and going, okay, first of all, what's up for me? What's going on for me? Noticing the emotions, then noticing the thoughts that are connected to those emotions, and then starting to question the thoughts that give rise to the emotions. And as I do, I look at all sides of it, every side that I can think of, and the work just kind of points me in directions that I might not look on my own. So when I do that, I often come up with so many more options than what I would have where I was at the starting point. And that the more options I see, the more my heart opens, the more I relax, and what I thought were problems often end up not being problems.
Sure. Yeah, it's so ridiculously simple on the outset. It's just a series of simple questions. But of course, doing it requires deep introspection and really wanting to dig for the truth and wanting to just really versus stay with your story, if you will. For me, the biggest fascinating thing was that I guess before I believed stress is just a part of life. And then when something stressful came to me, it's more like, oh shit, here's a big problem that I have to solve. And you have to change the outside world to fix that problem. And then Byron Katie has this one quote where she says, she words it many different ways, but essentially discomfort is the call to set yourself free. Or she says that stress is the alarm bell that you're believing something that isn't true. And then you start to think, oh, is it the fact that actually maybe the thing that's stressful isn't the outside world and the thing that's happening, but you're mixed up in some way. You're kind of crossed up and confused. And that sets a whole different definition of how your emotional spectrum works, how this beast, actually ends up working, that, oh, truth feels good and openness and peace and harmony. And then, when something's stressful, it just means there's some wires are crossed. You're confused about something. And that for me was, I just didn't believe it. I was like, that can't be possible. And then when I actually did the work, it's been humbling to see how accurate that's been true, And when there is an issue that, oh, I've been faltering in this area, it doesn't actually feel that painful. It's just more of an insight. Like, yeah, I've been fucking up this area for X number of years, but it's not actually the same emotion and the same stress, So, I don't know. I'm curious if you had a sort of a similar reframe when it comes to the idea of stress and peace and how that relates to being truth and not truth, and just sort of that whole, I don't know, thinking and emotional alignment and how they interconnect,
Yeah, we tend to think that it's the world out there that's making me stressed. It's my job, it's my boss, it's my partner, it's something, and this is kind of a reframe, because it's saying, wait a minute, these things out here are triggering me. Yes, they're challenging, definitely, but what I do with it inside is what makes me stressed or not. Now, when I'm not thinking about it, it just happens. Somebody says something, I feel stressed. Nothing I can do about it. But what the work does is it allows me to back up and go, okay, what just happened there? Hold on a second. I experienced stress and I saw it coming from them. What was the thought that I was thinking there? And let me look at it. Is it true? And so, yeah, I don't know if I have anything more to add than what you just said, but that is my experience as well. That the more I do the work, the more I'm the less bothered I am by outside things, but also when I am bothered by them, there's a part of me that's almost excited that something has come to my attention, like that alarm clock says, whoa, there is something sitting in here that you've been holding and were unaware of. And so it just keeps waking me up. And that's the way I see life. And then with the process of doing the work, it just becomes an enjoyable process of waking up, not just turn that darn alarm clock off.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people hear that, and at first, I know I didn't, they just don't believe it that's true. They're like, that's bullshit. Of course my boss is being an asshole to me, and that's what's causing it. It's not my own internal interpretation.
Right.
And then, of course, you start to do it, and then if you really do the work and really explore it, it's fascinating it's almost like mystery. It's very mysterious what ends up coming on the other side of your inquiry and your exploration.
And I think that's a really important point, is that you never know what's coming on the other side. And that's what real, genuine exploration is all about. I think of the work as exploration, as inquiry. And inquiry means I'm asking what is the truth, but I don't have a preconceived idea of what that truth is going to be. I mean, maybe it turns out that my boss is a jerk is true too. Like that, I'm not going to rule that out just because I'm questioning it.
Yeah.
But maybe that's not the whole story. Maybe I am also being a jerk here, both to myself and to them. And so often I find there's a mix of like, oh yeah, there's some truth in the original statement and some truth in the turnaround, and that's all I'm looking for. I just want to know the truth as best I can see it.
Sure. And also, I've known really strange things happen after you do it, is that the triggers just end up shifting for some. It's sort of, you can't really explain why, but the thing that was testing you do the work, and then suddenly that stimuli just stops. It's like we are in some way interconnected, and how they were called to trigger you in that way suddenly is no longer moving through them or something, like the mystery of life happens. And you just, after it happens enough times, you just go, okay, this is the way the world works, the universe works. But it's crazy.
Yep. Exactly.
And yeah, one last point I was going to say, that I think she's got a really good analogy. Byron Katie always says that you look at something and it looks like it is a snake, and you believe it's a snake, and you have fear towards it, metaphorically, and you walk closer and you realize, oh, it's just a piece of rope. And then you can never go backwards into thinking that it was a snake again and get scared by it, because if you're ever a kid and you ever did that, you'll have that reframe. And then, yeah, it's like once you dive into the truth and you investigate an area and you gain that insight, you really cannot go back to the way you were. It's like you've now really evolved in a profound way. You really sort of transcended that little issue until the next one comes up.
Yeah. That's my favorite thing about the work, is that the work I've done, the work I did 10 years ago is still serving me today. Like once that's done, once I saw that snake was just a rope, I really cannot go back to seeing it that way. And there are so many issues like that are just like, just a bunch of old ropes laying around that just don't scare me anymore.
Yeah.
And of course, there's always another one that gets me, and that's my next piece of work. But that's what keeps it interesting as well.
Yeah, for me, I was doing so much work at one point that I just bought a little notebook or whatever. So instead of using the print offs. By the way, yeah, so she has a lot of print offs and explains everything. And if you're curious to do the work, we'll talk about later how to actually go about it. But basically, as I was doing it, you need to write down your stuff as the exercise. And I was sort of flipping back through, when I finished one of these books off, I polished it off all full of, each page was a different work. I look back at the earlier ones and I just laugh at them. I was like, how was I actually stressed out by that? That's crazy. There's no way I believe that. But
right,
it's right. Like you
it's hard to fathom. Like I really believe that.
Yeah,
what?
it just becomes hilarious, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of people go to her actual events that she does, or they'll actually go to. I believe, I'm not sure what the name of her course is.
The main one is the School for the Work.
The School for the Work.
Which is it's a 9-day program in residence, either in California or in Germany. But it happens 2 or 3 times a year.
Sure. And then is that actually, once you've gone through that, you now can become a facilitator, whether it's volunteer or else make it actual, like you can start making your business around it, yes?
Well, there are no restrictions on what the work itself is just a free thing. It's like 4 questions and turnarounds. They're on thework.com, Byron Katie's website, and there's no restrictions. You could use that with your clients if you wanted to. You could do that professionally, all of that if you wanted to, without any certification. But if you want Byron Katie to recommend you as a certified facilitator, then she has a whole training program. And the first step is that School for the Work. That's not just for training facilitators, but that's for training anyone to really go deep in the work. But then once you've completed that, then there's probably maybe 800-hour course that she runs that trains people to become facilitators of the work. And if you pass through all of that, then she'll put your name on your website and recommend people for you too.
Yeah. And actually, that's how I came across yourself, was because one is, if you go to the website, she, on her YouTube channel, she actually has real people doing the work on these different various subjects. And then you can watch in real time someone going through this profound experience of having an insight or a reframe around this thing that's been haunting them type thing and stressing them out. Yeah. And for me, it's interesting because I see some people up there and those issues don't touch me. Like, I don't have any stress around them and I don't resonate with it. And then you see the one video that really does resonate with you and like, I'm going through that right now and I believe these things. And that watching somebody else go out there and put themselves on the line and go through the experience, you do it with them. You're doing the work with them. And yeah, your video was around not living up to your full potential. And that was a theme that I think many North Americans, I've been living over in Europe and traveling a lot, and you see that, for example, in Spain, I spent a lot of time in Spain, they don't have that pressure or that idea fed into them from a young age, but North Americans have a very strong idea that you got to live up to your full potential, and if you aren't, you're settling, and you have to really get your act together and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and so that's and also I think the video I think I saw today, it's got around 300,000 views or something like that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So basically, yeah.
Like, oh my god, I'm in trouble now.
Yeah, and I was telling you also that it's such a gift that people put their vulnerabilities out there and their stuff, and even though it's kind of like, yeah, people are seeing my inner vulnerabilities, if you will, it's so beneficial for other people. Yeah,
and then, that's a great way to start with the work too. For people that are new to the work, is just to watch a bunch of those videos, totally. And you get to really have the experience without actually doing it, and you get the flavor for it. Especially if you pick a topic like you said that you're resonating with, it can really be quite powerful.
Yeah. It's very fascinating to see the women that are overweight and they're saying, yeah, I'm too fat. And then you look at it and you sort of say, how is Byron Katie going to address this? Like, what's going to happen in this conversation? And then you sort of see as it unfolds. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I actually did work with Todd, and he has we'll talk about this a bit later, but you have a website and you actually do this now full time where you facilitate people through the work because, yeah, you can read the book and you get how it works and you apply it. And for myself, I got really far with that on my own. Whenever I'd stress come up, I'd go through it. And then there was just some issues that came up that I just found no progress being made. And that's when you can reach out to a facilitator. And there was free ones that I used, but honestly, I just felt that I tried that a few times and just nothing really connected. And then maybe the reason why I had more of a breakthrough with you is because you had also had very similar stress points or very similar issues that you work through with the work. And I think that's fairly important versus someone who hasn't potentially. I don't know. That's been my experience, That
helps a lot. Yeah. I mean, that there are several hundred people who are certified facilitators around the world now, and each one has worked different stressful areas and, just depending on what was big for them. And so, yeah, certain people you'll find if you're looking for a facilitator, you'll resonate because, oh yeah, they've been doing some of the same work that I want to do, and that can be a support. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. One thought that I had when I was first doing this a lot, I thought, am I really growing here? Is this really a path to growth, or is it just, every single day I have another silly little thought that I'm writing down on paper, put on paper and addressing? And so I'm curious, what have been the biggest insight that you've learned for doing this for 10 years? Where was it at the beginning days? And then, I don't know, when you're doing it now, I'm just really fascinated. A decade is a long time on a regular basis to be doing the work. So yeah, what have you gleaned from that?
True. Yes, it is a long time. Well, for me, like I said, the biggest issue was my relationship, and that took lots and lots and lots of worksheets and work and day in and day out for a long time. It first started out with just feeling very trapped and feeling very victimized, and slowly I started noticing that I was a player in the whole thing. And then over time, I remember it started clicking in, like, wait a minute, maybe I'm the one that's kind of the jerk in the situation, in the relationship. And I started having some kind of real eye openers that my partner wasn't the person I made him out to be. And so it started shifting. My emotions started shifting from like really almost feeling like just dislike to feeling more neutral. And then over time, I started finding a lot of things that I started liking about it, and then it started growing. And so that's a cumulative over years kind of process. But the kind of things that I learned was how to, if he says something critical to me, how to deal with that. Like, I no longer rarely get triggered when he says something very direct to me. And I'm a very kind of sensitive person. So for me to hear direct, like, that he doesn't like something, it would be very threatening to my ego. And now it's a much more, there's so many options. I see that I understanding for what he's saying, openness for what the truth of what he's saying may be. There's a lot more ease. I used to have a lot more trouble sleeping. I don't have trouble sleeping anymore. It's like, that's just in the relationship area. In the area of my business, and work and money, that's been a huge area that I've done a lot of work on. And I mean, I spent a couple months last year really doing some work on having to make a living, period. Like I was focused on, I have to make a living. And I was really questioning that. And I started realizing that was also not necessarily true. Like, that there were a lot of supports here. First of all, I'm married. Second of all, even if this fails, there's a million other options. Like, there was no pressure. And now I find myself in a really much easier space with money and with my business. It's hard for me to even look from such a high, from like 30,000 feet down on all the different things that have changed. But it's always been just one little thing. Somebody looked at me funny and said something. Somebody doubted me. Somebody gave me some negative feedback. And I would write a whole worksheet on that and go into it and see other ways of experiencing the same situation. And so that work continues to this day. There's still pieces that I find, stresses that come up, but the intensity of it, the kind of stresses that come up are just not as overwhelming as they used to be by a long shot.
I really resonate with what you said there, plus before when you said that you just don't get bothered by it as much, And because when you're in that place where you're almost in panic mode, you really do think that, oh, if I got the perfect job, that will solve this. And I don't believe that's true anymore. I think that, or if I'm in the wrong relationship, so you just cut it out, get another partner, but you're probably going to repeat the same thing over again. Yeah, it seems to me like we have these themes that we experience through life, and it's almost like that's the theme that we cut our teeth on to try to evolve and get growth. It's sort of like some people have to deal with addiction, some people have to deal with food and the relationship with gaining weight and all that whole thing. Like Oprah openly talks about that's one of her biggest challenges. Some people it's money. So like it's interesting how the work can definitely be a practice where you're getting progress or insight, or you're deepening into it and getting free of it, if you will, inch by inch, literally. You're getting your freedom just bit by bit.
Exactly. Like you said, cutting your teeth, it's like something comes, this is my issue. So what the work is saying, instead of like tabling it or trying to avoid it or somehow not deal with it, the work is just saying, here's a way to literally deal with it as it comes up. And so you just keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger in the areas where you've been weak. And so my weak areas become stronger, and it's really empowering.
Yeah, Ryan Holiday has a book, The Obstacle is the Way, and he says that the way out is through, where it's obviously a stoic approach. And I think, and Byron Katie definitely has that approach built into it, where you're just going directly into the fire, and getting freedom from it as you do. Yeah. Yeah.
And what I love about the work is that that process is somehow enjoyable. I actually enjoy doing the work. It's not like I have to do the work. It's not this burden. It's something that is playful, and I find it fun. So even though it's serious in certain ways, there's a lightness to it as well. And so even though I'm going into the stress, I'm finding that I can meet myself there, no matter how deep and dark it may feel.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
And I like how even no matter how dark or how evil the thought is that you're putting down on paper might be, somehow just putting the paper, you bring it into that grace, into that safe space, if you will, to like, you know what, we're going to go into it anyways. And yeah, it does take out the seriousness of it and the heaviness of it. Absolutely. I found anyways. And everything is you're able to put everything on paper and question anything, no matter what. No matter how. You can't put that on paper.
Sometimes I write some really embarrassing things. I'm like, I can't believe I'm going to write this, but that's what I'm thinking. So I write it down and I'm like, okay, I'm going to question it. And it's so freeing to do that. And other times it seems so trite. Oh, this doesn't really bother me, but it does to a certain degree. So I write it down and I work it. And each time I just get another bit of freedom.